All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to CB3 Manhattan's Executive Committee meeting for the month of January 2023. Happy New Year, everyone. If I have not seen you or spoken to you in the new year, Happy New Year. It's a lengthy agenda tonight, but we are going to start with attendance. So can y'all go right ahead?
Hi, everyone. Okay, Paul Rangel,
Yes, here.
Eric Diaz, Tariq Darrell, Tariq,
Yes.
Larissa Scheinberg,
Present.
Kenya Hernandez, present, Amanda Liu,
Yes.
Mei Lee,
Yes.
Jake Gold, Michelle Coopersmith,
Present.
Trevor Holland,
Present.
David Crane.
I believe Jake and David are running late, absent
Okay,
for the first attendance. They're the only ones I know that are late. I don't know about Eric. All right, so let's start off as I believe Kenyelle sent out minutes a couple weeks ago for the last, I think for last month. So any changes we need to make to it? Hearing none, minutes are approved for December. Okay, number 2 on our vote sheet, and not vote sheet, on our agenda tonight is votes on the comments. On comments that have been prepared to go to the Office of Cannabis Management. They are a draft of our comments on the regulations that have been put out. The regulations are not final. This is part of the process. I am going to save that item till the very end. It's because I do want people to come on or that are running late. So I want them to be a part of this and part of the discussion. That being said, I'm going to go right to my board chair report. So good evening, everyone, once again, and a happy new year. Just a couple of things. I don't know how long I'm going to take right now. Just a couple of things that I believe we are co-sponsoring a RAD Academy with the council member's office. For Tariq, that will be, we'll send you the, I guess the poster or the image that we can post on our social media feeds. I believe they already came up with the flyer, so it's just a matter of posting it. If I don't know if Carlina's feed has one already, you just take hers. It has our logo on it already.
No, we have our own.
Okay. So I believe that is coming up in a couple of weeks. Is that January 26th? Am I correct? It's one of those things. So I received questions about why I chose to go the task force route with cannabis management and this cannabis application. This is separate than any of the comments we're going to talk about tonight. My decision there was solely to focus on that specific card application involving Gotham Inc. And I wanted the task force to be limited to that specific item. So that's why it's not a secondary committee, and the members that were chosen to be part of the task force are not necessarily going to stay on if a committee is going to be created. I see Heidi's on the call. Heidi was asked to chair this specific item. It doesn't necessarily mean she'll be the chair of a committee. If that goes forward, I will go about doing those things a different way. And I'm going to wait until the regulations are actually released and finalized before making any kind of decision with the executive committee in terms of forming an actual committee in regards to cannabis. So that is the whole reason why I chose to have a task force, which I will probably plan on dissolving next month. I will keep it open for at least this month in case there's other applications that come in. I don't think we've received any notifications or anything like that from Office of Cannabis Management or any applicant. of these card applications, that licensees that came out towards the end of November. We've only received that one notice, and that's why I wanted us to be hyper focused on that one application and that loan application. So that's why I did things the way I did them. The people that I chose, I asked ahead of time. Doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the process I go for. I may have a more extensive process of who I put on that committee going forward, but this was solely just for this application, and that's why I wanted that to be the case. Other boards have decided to create committees. That's fine and all well and good for them. That's not the way I wanted us to approach it, especially with the regulations not finalized, especially when everything's being built on the fly. So I wanted us to just focus on what we knew and the information we had in front of us. So I'm grateful to Heidi for her assistance and chairing initially, even though I ran the meeting last week. She was a very integral part of everything that was going on, and every committee member, or excuse me, task force member that was a part of last week all offered valuable questions, and I thought everyone did a solid job in what they did. So I'm super appreciative of that. So that being said, it's a task force. We keep it minimal, and then we go forward after that.
Can I make a comment about the timing?
Yes, go ahead.
So we're not going to get any applications for the regular individuals opening up a store until after the regulations are finalized. However, there's nothing in the pipeline for us right now on the current card. However, we can get a card any moment, and if we do, it'll be last minute because of this 30 days. So I would recommend leaving it open until the regulations are finalized, because you don't know when you're going to get something last minute. I will also say I spent 30 to 50 hours at least dealing with this, trying to do research and get everything ready for the committees.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll just jump on and continue with my report. That the office, in particular, Susan, in meeting with Office of Cannabis Management, for President's office at one point, but mainly OCM. Us going to, I believe, Assembly Member Epstein had a forum that we went to. We were able to put our own forum together 2 weeks ago, which I'm very appreciative that a lot of board members showed up. So I'm grateful for that, to get a better understanding. I believe there's an email that was sent out yesterday about OCM doing specific stuff for community boards. So I believe there's one of 3 dates. I don't have those in front of me, as well as a fact sheet, which doesn't really differ from anything they have already said to us. Before I go into a different topic, Trevor, I'll take your question.
Yeah, mine was more along with what Susan had said, because if we get an application, everyone just happens to appear, I assume you're going to either reform the task force or because they obviously are coming before the regulations are finalized, which appears that to be very lengthy.
Right. Like I said, I'm not committed to dissolving it next month. I will hold it open until we have things more finalized and know when things are going to happen. So yes, I will hold it open for the immediate future and go from there.
And you mentioned that other community boards have committees, and I know this is built on the fly. Was there a poll or anything, or do you know how many boards have committees as of now? I know 2 has 1 or 3 or something, not 3.
CB2 definitely
6.
has a committee.
Yeah.
I think CB5 has one, and I think other boards are forming theirs. I've tried asking questions about what they want to do, and I figured this would be the best route for what I feel is best for us.
Okay.
I think CB5 doesn't have a committee yet. They have a working group that's been working on things like protocols and comments. They're the only ones that have submitted comments.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, so what she said. CB2 is the only an actual committee. There may be other boards that may have some committees. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that information for next month going forward. But I figured a task force, because it's singular in what its actions are supposed to do, can focus solely on this application. If there's another one that comes down the line, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. All right. Thank you, Trevor. So I've kind of, over the past year before I was reelected in November, I've spoken to all the chairs in different varieties and forms. I do, over the next couple of weeks, plan on talking to the chairs individually about different things that I've had on my mind recently. It's more along the lines of, future of your committee, to, what are you looking for, different things, what are we missing on this board, because we're going to, eventually we'll have to meet with the borough president's office to talk about applications, as those are out already for new board members, and what are your needs, amongst other things. So I do plan on scheduling meetings with all different committee chairs in the very near future. But I do want to take a more hands-on approach with every committee. There's a lot of things on my brain. Nothing I'm going to share that's going to get recorded. So I rather speak with all of you offline, and this is specific to committee chairs. Secondary committee chairs, which we don't have that many of. I will also chat with them at some point. But yes, I have a lot of stuff on my brain, whether from office operations to your agenda items to timing, anything of that sort. So, we can have that discussion. Now it's going to be either one-on-ones or two committee chairs with myself. Don't worry, I'm not going to violate any quorum rules or anything like that. But we will definitely have some conversations. I'll ask to set up some times to speak over the next couple of weeks, because I've had a lot of stuff on my mind over the past 2 or 3 weeks. I've noticed myself becoming a little bit less engaged from some strange reason. I will say it now. I did when I got sick last month during December full board. I had a return bout with COVID. And a lot of you know my first experience with COVID was a pretty terrifying one. This was kind of almost in the same breath. I do have my own long COVID things that I deal with, so I had become really lethargic and probably took my eye off the ball a little bit, for lack of a better phrase, on community board stuff and even work. So I'm gonna just admit a lot of that to all of you, because I want to be able to figure things out and regain my strength and be able to talk to all of you in a different light to see how we can change things up. I do want to put a lot less stress on the office, a little bit more on our plates to do different things. I think I have a lot of close relationships. I have closer relationships with some of you than others on this committee, and I want to make sure I'm on the same page with everyone. And that's committee chairs, and as well as other members of the exec secretaries and vice chairs and treasurers included. Treasurer, excuse me. There's no two, it's just one. Everybody else is a double. So that's what's been on my mind lately. I apologize for that. My physical health is kind of beating the crap out of me a little bit over the past couple of weeks, since the holidays. I am fine. I'm better now. Don't worry. I will get another booster in a couple of weeks or something like that. But to kind of turn back the clock it felt like it was 3 years ago again, was kind of rough. So I want to let you all know that I am doing a lot better, and I will be a lot more hands-on over the next several weeks and working with all of you. So that's a little bit about that. that is all I had for my report tonight in exec. Does anybody have any questions for me? I said the same thing to my students earlier and they got real quiet too. I felt like throwing an eraser. It was their last day of class today, so I was happy to get rid of them for at least the next 2 weeks when I see them back in February. All right. I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling through my notes here. 3-month attendance update. Tariq, I know you're not feeling too well. Can you just spew it out really quick?
Yeah, I honor transparency. As Paul did just state, I feeling weird today. This week has been difficult personally, but I just emailed, I just emailed you. I realized I dropped the ball in the fall. I know we connected on adjusting the spreadsheet, the formulas, and I forgot to check in again with you on if you had it yet, had fixed it. So
I did, and I emailed it to you, but I can, you mean, so this is not this 3 months, but the last 3 months, right? I mean, the last quarter you're talking about.
correct.
Yeah, I did. So if you still need that and don't have it, I
Please.
can forward it to you again.
That'd be great. Yeah, because I don't see it in my email. So and then but I did look at the attendance and so and I'm happy to, once I get that, to kind of go through all of that again, but attendance letters that went out was Kenyelle, Jamie Felber, Shirley Fennessy, Herman Hewitt. As I look at the math on meetings from October, November, December of the last 3 months, Kenyelle definitely fixed her attendance. And the other 3, Jamie Felber, Shirley Fennessy, Herman Hewitt, are still around the same attendance, lack of attendance in meetings. So I will, once I get that spreadsheet, I'll put in the actual percentages, but it's looking around the same.
So I'll send you an email, but
So what do we do procedurally?
So what we'll do is I'll take a look at the bylaws again, just to make sure. I don't know if a second letter needs to go out or if we need to bring individuals in on this round. I can look it up.
I believe the exec is supposed to discuss it and decide.
Right, right. So I think it's one of those 2 things for us. So I'm going to put this out there right now then. Do we want to bring these individuals in? This is Herman, Shirley, and who's the person? Jamie. Do we want to bring them into the next executive committee meeting and ask what's going on? Or do we want a second letter?
Paul, I'm looking at the bylaws right now. It says if the letter is sent and if during the next 3 months, the board member continues to be absent for more than 1/3 of their meeting obligations, the board chairperson shall propose the removal of the board member as set forth in section 1 below.
Damn, okay. Boy, I already terminated some students today.
I think we turn it back to you, sir.
That's not a good one. This is what I need to before I make a final decision. I'm not going to make a final decision. I need the actual numbers from them. I don't want to just go ahead and figure something out. But I'm going to discuss this with the exec. I know it is my discretion as to whether or not to propose the removal of a board member. I think in this matter, we can decide as a team.
Is it your discretion, or do you propose it and then the exec discusses it?
Can you reread that for me, Tariq, please? I gotta pull it up. Give me a second.
Yes, if the letter is sent and if during the next 3 months, the board member continues to be absent from more than 1/3 of their meeting obligations, the board chairperson shall propose the removal of the board member as set forth in section 1 below.
That says shall. It's just a ceremonial thing.
And it's this section 1, board may by majority vote at a regular meeting reprimand or remove a board member for cause. And substantial lack of attendance at board, committee, subcommittee, and or task force meetings as defined.
So it sounds to me like you propose it, as David says, as ceremonial, and then the exec discusses it.
So, Trevor, go ahead before I say anything else. Go
Two
ahead.
questions. So just to catch up to speed, the letter was already sent?
Yeah.
That
So,
was 3 months ago.
right. We faced this in the past, and I just don't remember what we did, but I don't think we proposed this exact removal. I mean, perhaps we did.
Yeah, it was the last bylaw change said that, and I believe we did that with one member we removed, and then it was proposed for other members and decided not to remove them.
Okay,
So both have
Thank you.
happened. Proposing that they be removed doesn't mean they should be removed.
gotcha.
So, that being said, with these 3 particular members, I'm proposing their removal and how we can discuss it. And how we want to approach it. Yeah, Michelle. Sorry.
I just had a question. Sorry if I'm forgetting. Wasn't there like some issue with the numbers last time? Were those the 3 people that like ended up being the final?
Yeah.
Shit
These are
list?
there was one person that the number had to change on, and that was changed.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I'm asking because one of those people is my committee member. So I'm thinking about.
I'm not aware of your committee member having a number change. The only one I know was Eric.
That's the number.
Got it. Okay. I just couldn't remember what happened. Okay. So is this a time? So
Yes. go ahead.
will we vote tonight to bring them in for removal? Is that, Paul, what we're doing right now?
Yeah, I'm just double checking. David,
But
did you
I
have
rem-
something you want to
I
say?
remember when this happened, I think was it the beginning of 2020 or the end of 2019, that we had like a kind of a hearing, if you will, during
We-
exec, and
we
then we
had
voted to
brought
remove. So I'm just asking, would that happen next month if we decide to bring the person in tonight? Okay, all right.
Doesn't have to. It's what you
Okay.
decide.
David,
Paul?
go ahead.
But if we decide, then yes, they would come and we would have a discussion. Remind me of who the 3 people are, and do we know of extenuating circumstances of any sort? So who are the 3, I guess?
Jamie Felber, Shirley Fennessy, and Herman Hewitt.
Okay. Yeah, in case of all 3 of them, I'd like to hear, I think we could have a discussion with all 3 of them and, and impress upon them, and they would start coming. It goes very privately, by the way, at this point. This isn't, I don't think we would put on the agenda, we're going to be discussing the removal of so-and-so, right?
We put on the agenda, we're discussing their attendance. When we did vote to remove someone, I mean, that certainly was on the agenda. And yeah, that's all public information.
What is all public information? I mean, the meeting is an open meeting. In any case, I don't know that we need to write on there that we are asking individuals A, B, and C to appear before the committee at this point. I mean,
Well, we never.
anyway, I would love to
publish
hear
it
from all
in
3 of
agenda.
them. Anyway, I would love to hear from all 3 of them
Okay,
and
so
talk,
that's,
because I think that all 3 should be able to, comply.
that's fine. I think that's what we did last time when we were on site. Amanda, May, and then Trevor.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there was any informal reaching out from anyone as a kind of like heads up, like, by the way, because I don't know how formal a letter is and how that may be received. So maybe like a informal phone call. I'm not sure if that's something that one would do before we go to having a hearing, which sounds a bit more.
Well, they
formal.
would just be coming in to explain as to why,
Okay, got it.
as what's going on.
Got
After that would be something different, but this would be more of bringing them in to explain why they have not been attending regularly.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
May and then Trevor.
Yeah, so I think what Michelle was referring to was for a completely different reason. But I remember quite a few of these, and it was all before years before. It was before we heard of COVID-19, and it was all in person. So it was for attendance. They did get a letter. The letter, Amanda, is more like, you're having a problem. How can we help you? It's like that kind of a letter. Then if they don't improve, then they get called in. So we talk to them in person. It's not just a letter. In practice, sometimes they were given another chance. And if they didn't improve again, that's when we did. We did actually have removed people for attendance. Sometimes it was people we never ever saw, like really literally, like they just disappeared off the face of the earth. And then there were people who like really argued with us at exec, and they were removed anyway. So, there's just different things.
Thank you, May. Trevor.
This is all assuming the numbers hold, because I think we need the numbers first to verify that they're.
Yeah, I think we need the numbers as well, but I'm gonna take Tariq's word for it. If it hasn't improved,
Okay.
So my thoughts are to bring them in next month, talk to them, see what's going on, then we go and take our action from there. So any disagreement there?
Paul, would you would do the reach out to them?
I think there's a process of how we do that.
Yes, we should have a letter. Someone should give me a letter within the next week or so that the office can send to them.
Tariq, this is what I'm asking you to do. Just give me the numbers and a letter will come from me.
Okay. Well,
Tariq, can I ask Tariq a question?
Yeah.
Or what quarter we're talking about? Because okay, so Tariq, at the end of October, I sent you a spreadsheet that was from April to September. Now, are we now talking about October to what?
November.
December through December.
Oh, okay, but so you just want up to September one, right? You want me to re-forward that to you, right? So
I'll connect with you offline.
Okay.
It's through December.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Sue.
so
I'll email
okay.
I'll
Email
email
me offline and tell me what because it takes a while. It takes, takes a little work.
You got it. I'll email you offline. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get the numbers. You guys do what you need to do. We will bring them in next month. Good? Capiche. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I just lost my place.
I'm reading through the bylaws now. It hops and skips through things. It's actually not entirely clear to me yet what is supposed to happen.
We're bringing them in.
Yeah, but
Speak with them next February, and then I just closed them out. I don't know why I just did that.
if the letter is sent and if during the next 3 months, the board member continues to be absent for more than 1/3 of their meeting obligations, their chairperson shall propose a removal. That's what we have just done, right? I believe it is.
Yes.
So the board may, by majority vote,
That's the full board.
okay, initiating the removal or not.
We're gonna
Okay,
bring
well, I have no problem. We're not violating anything by asking them to come in, but I think that Paul, you and I, and maybe a few others ought to talk about whether these procedures even make sense, because we blended a few things together in the last time, and I don't think this makes sense for the attendance process. I think we ought to be a little more explicit about.
That's fair.
We're
We
going to
can
have a
talk about that
conversation at
offline.
that point. Okay, and probably this kind of thing should be done in executive session, and that could be noted in the bylaws when we clarify it.
Yeah. No,
Got it.
it's the speaking to the individuals can definitely happen in an executive session. Because you don't know what they're going to share as to why they are absent or haven't been able to make it. Okay. All right. We got that curveball out of the way. Thank you. All right. I keep losing my place. I apologize. Okay, we're at the district manager's report.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to say, just open up if anybody, has anything they would like me to report on, please let me know either before the meeting or now, because I actually have a hard time figuring out what people want to hear and what they don't want to hear. We have a planning fellow. I reported, I guess, at the end around September, we had picked to, I had opened it up to the board to have projects for the planning fellow. No one submitted anything. So I came up with 2 that, Paul told me to send in. So the fellow is being monitored by the Fund for the City of New York. The person seems very bright and very engaging, but is kind of disappearing on the work. She, on her own, has kind of changed it to an affordable housing project to look at our affordable housing needs. I consider this fellow work all gravy. So she, because of some conversations between the fund and myself, they're reaching out to district managers to see how it's all going. And I told them she had disappeared. And I didn't know if she was still in the program. So she is now reconnected. So I am working with her on that. We may have something that can be reported to the housing committee. I don't know yet, but I am now working with her again. In January, council members asked for requests for discretionary funds. Every year, the community board has requested and received discretionary funds from both of our council members. You always see it on the budget that I distribute. And I, in this last week, have requested funding again from both Carlina's office and Chris's office. And I'm assuming that we will get that. If you decide to clarify the bylaws, you might want to, I found out some information regarding personnel issues that I had no idea. I found this out because of the citywide coalition we now have. So I always thought all raises and that sort of thing had to be by the full board. It's not true. The full board hires and fires, but other issues such as raises, which we have given in the last few years, do not have to be voted on by the full board. They have to adhere to the bylaw, whatever the bylaws are. So some boards have just the executive committee doing it. Some have a personnel committee. Some assign any actions for district manager to the board chair and the other staff to the district manager. So I'm going to suggest that when we look at the bylaws, consider raises to be maybe personnel and exec. It would just be a lot easier to do. Hiring and firing and still at the they serve at the board. I've noted, I didn't realize, or I didn't think about it before, that sometimes on committee votes, we change an address. We say we can't do it here, but you can do it there. We're actually have this on the committee for the cannabis license, but that's not what made me think of it. And it occurred to me that if we're okaying something that's at an address that's not on the agenda, we're not giving public notice. In SLA, if we change the address by, one number, it goes back on the agenda again. which is why we have now proofread all the SLA stuff very carefully before it's posted. So I just wanted to know what, if the exec has thought about this and what we should be doing about it, if anything. And I think that's about all oh, and then I just wanted to say I distributed the budget again. It's a good thing we get the discretionary funding. We're working right now on a project for human services, trying to hire somebody, which we'll do by the middle of next week, to do information survey and analysis of mental health resources in our community. And I expect that to be about $1,500, about 10 hours a week. So you all have the budgets, and that's about it. If there's any questions. But I would like to know on the addresses. I think we should, the committees, right now the committees are inconsistent. And how do we want to deal with that, if we want to deal with that at all? And I know in transportation, this has come up with buses, and I don't think it's ever been a big deal, but it's just not consistent with, again, with our SLA committee. Michelle?
Thanks, Susan. I had sent a couple of ideas for transportation projects for the fellow, and I was just wondering if those were in the pipeline.
This was last summer.
Right.
Oh, a pipeline for.
Or sorry if I thought you said that no one sent in proposals.
That was last summer. That was last summer. And so Paul and I made up two. That was last summer, the stuff you sent in for transportation.
Yeah, it was August 2020. Yeah.
I don't remember those, to be honest. And I don't know if I knew that they were for the fellow. We can certainly revisit all that if you want.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, I can just re-forward it to you.
I don't make the decisions. I gather the information.
Right. No, I understand. So I can forward it to you and Paul and David, if that makes sense.
That would be good.
Okay. Thank you.
I did not know this happened, but I did find out some boards got more than one fellow. I never knew you could do that.
Rude. And then on the address issue, I mean, I think that it is relevant for public notice, because like if the address changes, then it completely changes the people that are impacted. So probably makes sense to follow the SLA's protocols.
And I just want to offer, it's like, I know sometimes boards don't want something coming back again, but an option to that would be to handle it like we do administrative approvals, where we could say we could list it, but we're not bringing it to the committee unless somebody, wants to have it heard. So I need the committee to discuss that.
Can you just repeat that whole address thing again for everybody, just so we get an idea of what we're just putting together?
So sometimes we can approve something at an address that's different than what was put on the agenda. A perfect example is this month, we're saying we would approve a license for the cannabis, but not at this address. So if, say, the applicant wanted a different address, they would have to at least notify us of the new address, and we'd have the option of putting it on the agenda. I know in transportation, we've had stuff, and I don't think it's ever caused a problem. I'm not saying that it has, this is just that it could. But if we move something from one block to another and okay it at a different place, the people on that other block don't have notice. So I guess, David, do you want to weigh in on that?
Oh, I see Trevor has his hand up. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I wasn't looking. Sorry. Go ahead, Trevor.
So there's two things, and I agree we need to have consistency And the other question you're asking is, should we make that decision administratively or at exec? when it
No,
has
I'm
to-
giving that, no, what I said administratively, I was just giving you an option. I think sometimes when you say we won't approve it here, but we'll prove it there.
No, I understand.
It's really probably not going to be affecting anybody. We don't know, but it probably is not. So what we can do, instead of saying we'll definitely put it back, if the committee doesn't want them to come back, what we could do is we could, for the next month, say, do a not heard at committee, and unless somebody in the community wants to weigh in, and just list it on the agenda as not heard at committee, the same way we do with administrative approvals in the SLA. I'm just saying this is an option that allows you to notify without bringing it back to committee.
So I think there's two options right? Well, there's three. One, do nothing. Two, do it the way you suggested. Or three, do it the way that's been going on, although it's inconsistent. Oh, that's
Yes.
the same as one, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
David,
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it needs to change. I'll explain situations where we use it. It's almost always a bus application. And we'll say this is right below someone's bedroom window that apparently DOT didn't know about. So we don't approve it at this location, but we would at a nearby location. We ask them to do it at a nearby location. Now, so we're not required to have full details. I mean, I totally agree. I'm usually our biggest advocate for being pretty precise about, sort of blast radius of any particular agenda item so people can, make informed decisions about whether to be there or not. The public can. However, these things are always tied to a clock. We have to do our opinion. Well, at this particular kind is we got to do it that month. We can't put it off by a month unless we had everyone in agreement that we would, the agency and or sometimes it possibly it could be the applicant would have to agree that they'll put it off by a month because we're now considering a different location. I don't know. I don't think since it hasn't become an issue and we don't. It's essentially we don't go more than half a block away in these recommendations. I don't know exactly what to say, but it's a hypothetical problem that someone could get upset by it. And our defense could just be, well, it was very close. It was a foreseeable outcome. And, and I hate to be rude to them, and we're not required to have fully disclosed all possible outcomes of an agenda item. Is that helpful?
I agree. No one's ever complained. We've never had it be a problem. The only thing is as far as the time is concerned, it's sort of not like a ULIP or anything. It's at the discretion of DOT, and 100% of the time they've just extended it a month. So I don't think the time's the issue. Everything else you said, I agree with, except the time.
Okay. It would mean forcing the applicant to come back a second time. Here's where it just happened to us. We just did two motions. It's the same application, but both sides of Delancey Street. The motions say, don't do it on the east side of Delancey. Co-locate the stop with the B, whatever the bus is that crosses the bridge, on the other side of Essex Street. So we asked them to move it from the east corner to the west corner. So there is a perfect example where we have just done exactly that. We said, don't do it at the proposed location. We gave them a very precise, which is unusual, very precise location. Is this what has prompted your thinking on this, Susan, this particular item?
Yeah, when you and I discussed it and I realized this is happening, and like I said, it's never been a problem. It's strictly a procedural question. It's never been a problem, and I don't expect it to be these particular ones to be a problem. It just occurred to me because I look at the different committees.
Yeah. Oh, I understand.
One committee does it one way and another does it another way.
Okay. All right. Well, it would be unpleasant to have an application like that come back both for the committee and for the applicant. It would be kind of a waste of time in most situations. If it was a large kind of a change or something that was going to be, potentially rather impactful, I would hope that we would think at committee to put it off by a month in this way.
Any other comments? I think it's a slippery slope because if the address changes radically, you may, if it's only like half block, then I could see a kind of an administrative approval process. But if you're approving a license or something like that, but the address changes like completely out of, we may have to hear it. It's that's unpleasant, but it's a whole different set of people.
We could just put for the next month, not heard at committee. These applications have been approved for these addresses and just put in the new addresses. That way you're not making the applicant come back that way.
Yeah, I see. That didn't quite clear to me. So you would actually say in this case, this, I have to forget what the name of the Monroe Incorporated bus stop has been approved for, and then give the actual address where it was going to be and say not heard at committee.
Yeah, and just give the option if you have any.
So that would be useful.
Okay.
And if someone showed up, then we would hear about it. We would then hear them at committee, I imagine. If someone from the public did come and say, hey.
We would tell them, no, we would tell them to contact the office if they had any
okay.
issues, which
Okay.
is exactly what we do with administrative approval for SLA.
I don't know how much we need to discuss it here. I would be fine with doing that for these particular transportation items.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Anybody else not fine with it? All right, yeah, then we're fine with it. Let that be the process.
Okay.
Yeah, you done with your report?
Yes, thank you.
David, did you have a Robert's Rules item prepared for tonight?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
So I want to talk about closing down discussion. Not, like all the 500 different ways, but just generally discussion's been going on an item. So how can the committee or how can the full board gracefully, democratically get to a vote? First of all, let me say that it's up to the chair to keep moving things towards a resolution, right? So what can the chair do? There are some rules. First of all, you shouldn't allow one person to speak more than once on a motion. We're talking about, you got a motion, there's a, it's a difficult one, so there's a lot of debate. The chair should not let one person speak more than twice. If they put their hand up again, you should point out, just to pick on people here. I'm sorry, Trevor, you've already spoken twice on this item, so I'm not going to recognize you, just like that. Then you will run out of speakers at some point, right? The other thing is, you want to keep things fresh, and it's one of the rules. You shouldn't recognize someone to speak a second time until someone who wants to speak, who hasn't yet, gets to speak, right? That's, like I said, very gracefully. No member is entitled to be called on to speak a second time in debate on the same motion until everyone who is seeking recognition has had his or her first opportunity to speak. Okay, so let's say Michelle and Trevor's hands are up and Trevor's already spoken, right? But Trevor's like the next in line. I would say, I'm going to recognize Michelle because she hasn't yet spoken on this item. Okay, so to bring in a diversity, because it can get stale if the same person keeps saying everything. Then this is a rule that is very difficult for us to do, but it's not that difficult. You're actually supposed to alternate between people speaking for and against an item. So if it gets bogged down with like 10 people in a row talking for it, the chair really should say, the last few speakers have spoken in favor. Is there someone seeking recognition to speak against the motion? And then let them go right away. All right, so these are ways to keep the debate from getting bogged down. Now, once you start to feel it's time to end debate. You're the chair now. How can you do that? Is there further discussion on this motion? You know, let's say people are starting to talk about other things, which is an indication that you've been talking too long about one thing. It's like, you know, about the motion for this bus stop. Is there any more debate on that? Just ask point blank. You know, tell people, limit your discussion to this specific item. Are there new opinions on this motion? Please limit your comments to new opinions, right? Just escalate it like that. Fine. At some point, you can actually say, I'm going to close debate now. Paul does this very well. I have done it as well, where you would just say, I'm only going to recognize these next two people. And then if that's not agreeable, you're going to probably hear about it from the committee, from the other members. But do that. That's how a chair can shut things down. Now, let's say your chair is not doing that. Your chair is just letting it go on. How can you, as a member, do it? And this is what I had told Paul I was going to talk about. Call the question. What is it? Okay. We hear it a lot, and new members don't necessarily know what it is. It's a motion to end debate. Don't be a stickler on what the word is. If someone has said, I move that we end a debate, I move that we vote now, you know, I move that we call, or I call the question. All those things are the same thing. It must be seconded. I continually forget this, but I refreshed my memory before this. Two people want to shut down debate before before the chair has to recognize it. And it is a suggestion. Oh, also, it can only be done when you have been recognized to speak. You can't just yell it out. These are all just technicalities, but the fact is, when the question has been called, when someone has moved to end debate, and it's recognized, the chair, there's no debate on that. The chair puts it to how many want to end debate? Vote yes. Count. How many want to continue debate? Vote no, and then count those. That's how I usually phrase it if I'm chairing a meeting. How many want to continue debating? I'm sorry, how many are done debating? Count it. Whichever wins that vote, you're done. Now, so is that clear so far? The point is that there's a second vote after that. If you're in committee, if it's in full board, we just stop debating the item because it's going to get voted on at the end of the meeting. But people get confused when they're voting on the question sometimes as to whether they're voting on the underlying motion or not. They are not, right? We're ending debate. If you don't end debate, you continue debating. If you do end debate, then you have a vote on the motion. I don't know if that's clear. If it's not clear to you and you don't want to embarrass yourself now, please reach out to me because I would like to understand how to make it intuitive to people who are confused on that point, or if you have some insight into that. I do want to talk about, yeah, Paul.
I'm sorry, quick question. Just to going back to the call to question portion, it's the chair recognizes the person calls the question, it's got to be seconded, right? Can the chair maybe I missed this in your discussion just now. Can the chair just go ahead and say, no, we're going to keep debating and overrule, or do you need the votes on it?
The short answer is the chair can do whatever the chair wants, right? Well, you and I've talked about this. You can break the rules as chair. It's not always advisable to, and I wouldn't. I never do. I'm just because I'm weak that way. But if you do, you open yourself up to political situations is the reason for not doing that. Now, but here I'm going to use an example based on a real situation. So I'm asking, can it be used undemocratically? And yes, it can, and it should not be. It can definitely be used to absolutely just shut down dissenting voices. And this is undemocratic. If it's been going on too long, it's one thing. If it's being used to prevent a dissenting viewpoint from being spoken, and it hasn't been spoken yet, that is not democratic. So the thing is, if the chair knows that this is being done democratically, they could just say that actually, I would just break the rules at that point. If I was a stronger chair, I would just say, I actually am going to continue debate for a little bit here, or maybe I would say, I actually want to hear if there's a dissenting point of view, if that's what I detected was happening. Is there a dissenting point of view before we go to the call to question? Sort of get slippery with the rules as chair. What happened at my meeting, I guess someone spoke about why no debate more was needed. They explained, they basically debated, they stated why it wasn't needed, and then they said call the question. I should have immediately not recognized that, because the first thing out of your mouth has to be, I call the question. You can't get the last word and then call debate to let no one else speak. That is out of order. And anybody who's chairing ought to remember that. That's a clear sign that it is not being used fairly. Or like in this case, it actually was the rationale for why there should be no more debate, and then a call to question. Absolutely, I wasn't thinking, because I should have known immediately that the motivation here was to prevent people from speaking. And I should have not recognized that motion. So does that sort of helpful, Paul? There are different scenarios. If you really haven't heard enough debate, you could do what I said first. If the person has sort of abused the rules in the way they did the motion, then I am sort of using a technicality to avoid recognizing it. Trevor?
Yeah, sometimes what happens at full board, and this hasn't been recent, obviously, but years, is that we're debating something, and from the back you hear, I call the question from a person who hasn't been recognized. I think it happens a lot. So you're saying that scenario, the chair can say, I haven't recognized you. I'm going to recognize the people in front of you first, and then go to that person.
Correct. They should do that. They should never recognize if someone is speaking out of turn. They have to be recognized in the order, like I recognize you just now.
Okay.
Your hand was raised, and you could have said, I call the question. And I would have gotten the hint.
Okay, thanks.
And another thing, if they call the question, as chair, if you feel, and this is easier in person, but if you feel that everyone is going to agree, you can just say, if there's no objection, then we will end the debate. Don't force people. You don't ever have to force people to do a long vote on something procedural like this. And so you're almost certainly going, if it's really is just dragging, people are going to be, even people who had their hand up, maybe just like, yeah, okay. So you can just say, if there's no objection, then we'll end the debate. If someone objects, then do the count.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Dave.
You don't, but so to emphasize, you don't have to wait for someone to call the question in order to propose that we end a debate. The chair can basically, insert that in as part of their chairing. We've been at this for a while. I think we could go to a vote. Is there any objection to that? You don't need to wait for them to call the question. And if someone objects, continue the debate or whatever you want to do. Done.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I don't think it's ever really been abused or anything like that, but I think it's a good source of just understanding what, as board members and as board chairs, what we can and cannot do, especially under Robert's rules. Some of us have better knowledge of it, some of us don't. So this is a good way to kind of just get a good understanding of what's available in our toolbox. I know I have that little pocket Robert's rules that I try to utilize as much as I possibly can for full board. No, I don't ever really need it here at exec, but full board is definitely when it's important to me to kind of like, okay, I may need to use this at some point tonight. And about 98% of the time, I'll call David 15 minutes before to clear it with him as the parliamentarian. So always from a parliamentarian standpoint, reach out to David if you have questions that might help your meetings go a little bit more smoother if, or however you would like it to go. All right. Thank you, David. And because that's a perfect segue in terms of being smooth with meetings. There's been a request to, we've talked about this in the past. I don't know if we've talked about it since I've become chair, but when Alicia was chair and we moved over to the Zoom platforms for our virtual meetings, a request to maybe go all to webinar format through for every committee. Right now it's full board, exec, parks. Those are the webinar formats. We did the task force meeting in webinar. We did the forum in webinar format as well. So right now, I believe the only committees that are not in webinar format are SLA, transportation, land use, and human services. In order to kind of line things up, and I've found, this is me speaking, I've kind of fallen in love with the webinar format. I think it's a little bit easier to maneuver, at least from when I'm hosting and whatnot. Even at full board, I feel like I have a good feel for how Zoom works just because of what I've done for work and utilizing it over the past few years. But I would like us all to move to a webinar format. I've noticed at some meetings that people just take themselves off mute and start chatting it up and just start saying stuff. And that becomes problematic when you're trying to get to an item that may be controversial, that may have some more information, and you kind of just want to get through. We did a Robert's Rules item today, and now how do we move to the next item of being more efficient? And this is that. I'm going to open this up for questions right now, but I would like to move everything over to a webinar format so that way everything is lined up the same way for every committee, and that's open for discussion now. Oh, Michelle, go ahead.
Thanks, Paul. I'm fully in support of doing this. Just for everyone's context, I don't know if Paul also does this, but I know people on CB1, CB4, CB2, and CB5, they all do webinar for committee meetings. We are a complete and utter outlier for not doing it. And I, like Paul, am tired of folks unmuting and disrupting the meeting. Not knowing who's talking, it's extremely disruptive. So I am fully in support of moving all committee meetings to webinar format. I think it just makes it so much easier for chairing, which is already a difficult job. Thanks.
Thank you, Trevor.
Just one note, we went to webinar format because we have nothing controversial on our agenda. But I initially, just for reference, thought there would be a lot more pushback from people, and there wasn't as much pushback. People could still participate, and I don't know how we would have facilitated meetings if we had not gone to webinar format. I'm not necessarily saying that everyone should do it, but I think it works for my committee, and we didn't get as much pushback as we thought.
Yeah, I know we had those incidents last year with your committee, and I think that's what initiated the change over there. But I think I would like to see this go uniform, just like other boards that do. And this is the one thing I would like to see go completely uniform. Is there any other comments? Susan, you have your hand up? Susan?
I'm sorry, I forgot I was muted. I just want to make a procedural appreciation. So about 2 months ago, if Paul will remember, we got an email asking why we were having a committee in a certain way and all these questions. And it was very good that I was able to say this was discussed at the exec and considered very carefully in, their reasons for doing it. So, I think it's good that the decision is made for all the committees together and that it's made here and not randomly or, without thought. So I just want to appreciate the the procedure.
Thank you. Larissa, you give me a high five or you raising your hand? Okay. Go ahead.
Raising my high five and raising my hand. So 2 for 1, absolutely, Paul. Just a positive comment regarding the webinar format. From a Zoom facilitator's perspective, it actually can increase participation because those who are not panelists can drop questions in, and the questions can be addressed in order. It's much more, I think it's much more fair for everyone to participate in that format. And we can get out do a lot more, much more expeditiously. So I really like that from a facilitator's perspective.
Okay. Thank you. David Craig.
As the person most likely to overlook emails and such, is this going to require, I mean, I noticed that sometimes I am always put in and sometimes I have to find an email and ask to be put in or invited. I don't even know what the technical term is for that.
You have to be invited.
Have to be invited. So
You get an email, and if you don't join as a panelist, you can be promoted, but it's much easier. You will get an email 1 week and 1 day and 1 hour before the meeting.
okay. All right. So recently I tried to pre-register for one and I made a mistake and I ended up doing it the day of. And
So
it's hard
David,
for everyone to
if you allow me to cut you off really quick.
Good.
With this, and this what we do, this is our process from when we have full board or exec. We put everybody's emails into the panelists tab and you get that email. You don't have to pre-register. We know who we're sending it to. If it's something different that you have to register for, that's different, like a forum or something like that. This is different because you are being invited as a panelist. You're invited as a panelist tonight. I know you came through the attendees list. I saw that. Like you clicked the link, but if you had went into your email initially that said the warning line, you would have just came right in as a panelist. That's how that would work. So like when you have transportation next month, which I don't think is going to happen next month, right? But or March, your entire committee will be panelists, and it will be sent to them a week before, a day before, and an hour before the meeting. Your link to join as a panelist. So it works out fine. And
one step is very nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Maylee, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment. So I was one of the ones, early on, I was not that interested in having the Human Service Committee as a webinar, but I guess I just learned, or maybe it was a new feature, that webinar attendees can also speak verbally, right? Their participation is not just limited to putting stuff in the Q&A and the chat. Right? I mean, our webinar is like that, right?
Yeah, so
I kind of recall the attendees, like, actually you let them, I mean, they don't show up on screen, but they can, verbally
so what
speak.
happens is, let me tell you what we do. I'll give you my full board procedure. What we do a full board is anybody who's going to speak for public session, they go to the attendees. They're not panelists. And I have the list of names. Susan produces it for me a couple hours before the meeting. I know who's on the attendees list. And then when we're ready to promote them, we allow them to talk. And then they kind of jump into the panelist portion for like a minute. And then I remove their permission to talk once they're done. And then I kick them back into attendees. So it actually works fine. It actually works fine.
Oh, okay. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't full board. It was at the Cannabis Control Task Force.
It's the same.
It's the same thing, right? Okay. So okay, that's just what. So if that's, then I think that's okay.
Yeah.
So I would be, yeah.
It'll be fine. I think for the bigger meetings, and in this case, SLA, right? That has usually a lot of items. It's definitely needed. It was needed at Parks. We made a quick transition to it So there's going to be some items, I guess, on transportation from time to time, whether it's a bus application or something like that, that may have a lot of people coming out open streets, that it will definitely be useful for. So cannabis control webinar was definitely useful, because I could tell you probably at the committee meeting last week, I could see everybody taking themselves off mute. It was going to happen. So it works things out, makes things a lot cleaner. Go ahead, Amanda. Are you high-fiving too? No.
High five also. And can I call the question? Because it sounds like everyone seems very positive about this.
Look at this. Look at you, Crane, teaching everybody on the fly. So we're going to webinar format, people. All right. For every committee. As the final decision, we'll clean it up over the next couple of days. Okay. Trevor.
Are we doing it next month or the following month?
We can do it for next month.
Only because maybe you want to give people a warning, but doesn't matter.
Well, I'll warn everybody a full board. How about that?
Okay.
That everything's going to go to webinar format. It's going to give us enough time to change everything over. The first meeting is usually human services normally. So
Yeah.
We'll be ready for that. All right. Thank you. Look at that, Amanda. Got me to shut up. There we go. Response to budget priorities. Susan, is this going to be yours?
Sure. So in January, in October, we submitted our budget priorities. In January, the mayor produces a preliminary budget that starts a budget dance with city council between now and June 30th. There will also be an executive budget and then an adopted budget. So I sent to the exec the responses to our budget priorities. They were pretty not really direct responses. There was a lot of, you should contact OMB. They used to always say you should contact the agency. Now they say you should contact OMB, different administration. So they're beginning to change things. I would really recommend that committees look at the responses and decide, what they would like to maybe talk to OMB about. I will certainly work with everyone to do that. There is also a process that's in the charter, although we often ignore it. There is a process for community boards to respond to the preliminary budget. Paul, I got information from OMB on this, which I forwarded to you this afternoon. So if there's like a program that you committees particularly are concerned about and it's not getting the funding we advocated for, we can write more testimony on why this is really important and why the preliminary budget should be changed to accommodate this important need. They get sent to OMB, the agencies. I don't think we need to vote because we've already voted on these priorities. It's just, follow-up advocacy. So I would like the chairs to consider all of this. And, I'm happy to work with anyone on this. And I will also say the network of the citywide network of district managers for community boards has been working with DCP on the lack of adequate responses that we're getting. And so I was really, really disappointed today to see the responses that we got. And we will certainly follow up on the fact that these are not really helpful responses to community boards. Trevor?
Yeah, I'm just not sure what we're supposed to do, because all the responses I saw were like you indicated, go to OMB. Didn't even say go to Park. So I'm just not, for my committee, I'm not sure what we do.
So Parks is unlike other agencies because Parks doesn't have a capital budget. It doesn't come from the agency. It comes from mostly the council members. I usually actually meet with the council members at their request to go over the budget priorities. If you want to also set up a meeting, we can meet with the budget directors for the councils on specific parks if you want to explain why they're so important in the funding. Usually council members are very, very good about allocating funding for parks as prioritized by the community board. Sometimes it takes years, but they're pretty good about following that. But we have that option. I wouldn't go to OMB because there's no capital budget for them to say yes or no.
Okay.
All right, is there anything else on this matter? Nope. No questions coming.
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
All right, thank you. It's always gonna be on here. I think we already told Tariq we're gonna send the Carlina and Rat Academy.
You
get
don't need
posted.
anything from Carlene. I just sent it to both of you.
I said, okay, no, I'm talking about the Rat Academy.
Oh, yeah,
Is there anything else to be promoted on social media that you need on? I can always post stuff on the Twitter account that I don't think gets many hits, but I didn't buy a blue check mark, so no. Okay, if not, just always you can always send Tariq an email. You CC me and Susan on it. If we can post anything, please let us know. All right, I'm gonna go back to number 2. Votes on comments to draft regulations for the Cannabis Control Board. Once again, just for context, the proposed regulations came out a couple months ago. OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, has opened up the public comment period. Excuse me, sometime around December, I guess, a little before the holidays. The public comment period ends on February 12th. What we are doing as a board is we are sending in comments as a board. This is not going to stop you as an individual of sending in your own comments. I will make that very, very clear. This is what we're sending in as a board. This is what we're going to potentially send. There's a draft that could be changed here tonight, bullets and things. I believe a couple of members may have chimed in on of regulations. I know it's like a 283-page document, but only some of it really pertains to the community board's role in all of this, and that's what we're focused on. Anybody else is focused on anything else within the regulations, you have up until February 12th to send those comments in as an individual. But as a board, this is what we will vote on. We'll send in an email OCM for them to figure out how they're going to do their regulations or whatever changes they are going to like to make. Any questions so far? Excuse me. Okay, I know everybody has kind of different ideas on this. I know Susan sent out an email on my behalf a couple weeks ago asking for any comments. I know some people may have sent some stuff in or have their own ideas that they wanted to present tonight at exec, but we wanted to finalize this at exec tonight to present to the full board on Tuesday night. And this is completely separate from the actual application process. This is something very different, and we make that very clear that that task force stuff is different than this. So this is simply sending in our comments on regulations on proposed changes. Michelle, go ahead.
Sorry, come back to me.
So it was a high five. Okay. All right, so there is a draft. Susan attached some potential comments on the back of the agenda for tonight, or the second or third page of the agenda.
The second and third page, yes. I only got one comment, and that is taken into this, put in here. one person made 2 comments.
So I know others may have some comments they would like to make tonight. That is fine. I accept those in. We can put those in. I don't know if everybody's gotten a chance to see these bullet points. This is stuff we've kind of been thinking about based on conversations with OCM and or anything like that. Now you're ready, Michelle? Now am I coming back to you? Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, so I looked through the draft comments, and I have drafted a resolution that I'd like to move to the floor that we can then discuss if there's a second for that.
Second.
Excuse me, you did a whole different resolution?
Paul,
I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand.
point of order, Paul.
So I don't think it's a different resolution. It's based on what you read today. Or
Yeah,
you
I
put
mean,
it
I'm a
together,
member of this
and
committee. I'm allowed to
you
do
put
that,
it
aren't I?
together. Okay.
And I just got a second, so.
Okay. Here. I'll pull everything up.
Yeah,
There was a second. There was a second.
No, just
Trevor.
clarification.
Yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, basic. So this resolution that I'm reading is different than what you're going to pull up, or the same?
I haven't seen the draft yet.
It is different. Can we pull it up?
Okay, because I'm thinking that we're talking about the resolution that was sent out by Susan.
Okay, let me see what's in my email. Oh,
I
I
just
see.
sent it to you.
Thank you.
So once we have it up, am I allowed, can I speak about it, Paul?
Yeah, give me a second.
Thank you.
Uh, Michelle, is this it?
I can't see it. It
Oh, this sucks. Okay.
just says Paul Rangel has started screen sharing.
Is anybody can see what I have up?
No.
It looks like it's still cycling. May come up in a minute.
Oh, Jesus. My computer froze.
Paul, I can also pull it up if you want to give me the, oh,
Well, no, you know what? That's fine. Actually, if you have it up, you should have. Go ahead. You can pull it up on your end.
sure. Okay. So, Paul, is it okay if I speak on this?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so I took the CB5 resolution that was circulated and used that as the model and called out the things, the specific regs that were in the bullets that were sent earlier today. So sort of my overarching idea about this, and I think I've been pretty clear about how I view community board input as it relates to cannabis dispensaries, is that we should not be commenting on individual applications. I've said that from the very, very beginning at exec committee. I'm sure you guys have heard me say this. I've said it at full board also, I believe. I see dispensaries as analogous to liquor stores. So as I said, community boards do not opine on off-premises licenses for the sale of alcohol. And we know that the state in New York City allows marijuana smoking wherever cigarettes can be smoked. But as you'll see in this resolution, we address that by asking the state to impose stipulations on these licenses, asking them to discourage smoking outside of dispensary premises. we could not ask the state to ban smoking outside of it because the state law does not allow others to restrict smoking beyond what is already in the law. That would have to be like the legislature would have to change that. So because we're making commentary on the regulations, which is an OCM thing, and that, in the bullets we got today, it says, discourage operators, but not, ban smoking. And so I think that there were like 3 things that were important to call out, right? One is and this is discussed at the, I'm sorry, I'm not being very clear. This was discussed at the task force meeting, which is not allowing dispensaries or within 500 feet of community facilities that are substance abuse treatment centers. So that was one thing to include. The next thing would be about the smoking outside and asking the state to discourage applicants from allowing that smoking outside. And then the third was to ask for earlier hours than 2 a.m., which is what is allowed under the state law, earlier than 12 a.m. in residential areas. So I think that if these things are important to us, which I believe that they are, we should ask the state to impose restrictions on those 3 things on all licenses through their own regulations, which is what we are commenting on right now. So this is the right thing to do, in my opinion, for several reasons, including that it treats all applicants equally and fairly. They know what they're signing up for at the very beginning, and it will preserve our limited community board resources, which is another thing that has come up in our discussion of this, which is, everyone is stretched really thin already. So why not just ask the state to do the work for us and impose these things, on the upfront? So should I read through this whole thing? Should I send people drafts? What would be, it's 2 pages. Paul, what do you think?
This is gonna be one of those I'm gonna want to see read.
Okay.
So everybody has an idea, because they were given bullets over a couple hours ago, and this is something completely new, and I just want it for the record. So
Okay.
thanks.
Can I suggest starting from the therefore, which really summarizes well?
Don't read the whereases.
Well, maybe read them afterwards, but let people
Okay.
get to the meat of it right away.
Okay, so here's the meat of it. Therefore, be it resolved that Manhattan Community Board 3 makes the following recommendations regarding the cannabis regulations and enforcement of existing and future laws regarding cannabis dispensaries. Cannabis dispensary establishments should not be allowed within 500 feet of a community facility that is either a substance use disorder treatment or a recovery facility. Closing hours for cannabis dispensary establishments in residential areas should not be later than 12 a.m. to allow nearby residents to coexist with local businesses. Notification time periods to community boards about new cannabis dispensary establishment applications should be not less than 45 days. Smoking should be discouraged directly outside of cannabis dispensary establishments, and the state should provide required signage to operators to post outside their establishments with this message. OCM should ensure that dispensaries and consumption sites are equitably distributed, and these suggested amended regulations should be applied to all applications in order to ensure the fair and equal treatment of all applicants and remove the need for community board input, which would be a substantial burden on the limited and already strained resources of CB3. So just for context, I pulled all of these out of whereas clauses so I can read through the whole thing, and you'll hear this again. Paul, is that what you think?
Go ahead.
Okay. Bear with me. Whereas in 2021, New York State legalized the production, sale, and use of recreational cannabis, which created the ability of the state to license retail cannabis dispensaries and establishments for on-site consumption. And whereas the regulation of these establishments will be predominantly handled by the state, and the state has created a state cannabis control board for that purpose. And whereas within certain guidelines, local governments can pass local laws and regulations governing the time, place, and manner of such establishments. And whereas Chapter 2 of Subtitle B of Title 9 of the official compilation of codes, rules, and regulations of the state of New York has been amended to provide, among other things, various rules regarding adult use cannabis and the licensing of adult use retail dispensaries, therefore going forward known as the cannabis regulations. And whereas regulations regarding establishments for on-site consumption are expected soon, and CB3 expects to have comments on those regulations when the time comes. Whereas Manhattan CB3 desires to comment on the proposed cannabis regulations, and whereas section 119.1 and 119.4 of the cannabis regulations allows local governments to restrict cannabis establishments to not less than 1,000 feet from one another, 500 feet from a school, 500 feet from a community facility, and 200 feet from a house of worship. And whereas CB3 believes that there should be an additional category restricting cannabis dispensaries within 500 feet of a community facility that is either a substance use disorder treatment or a recovery facility. And whereas section 119.2 of the cannabis regulations allows local governments some ability to regulate time, place, and manner of the operation of licensed adult use cannabis retail dispensaries and or on-site consumption sites. And whereas regarding hours of operation, section 119.2 only allows local governments to restrict retail dispensary activities within the hours of 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. and on-site consumption activities within the hours of 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Section 119.2 does not allow local governments to restrict cannabis operations to less than 70 hours per week. And whereas CB3 believes that closing hours for cannabis dispensary establishments in residential areas should be not later than 12 a.m. to allow nearby residents to coexist with local businesses. And whereas section 119.3 of the cannabis regulations provides for notification to municipalities only basic information regarding a cannabis license. And whereas CB3 believes that additional time is necessary for the municipality to provide public notification and that such time period should not be less than 45 days. And whereas any discussion about cannabis dispensary licensing must also address enforcement of existing applicable laws regarding secondhand smoke, etc., enforcement against proliferation of unlicensed cannabis establishments, and protection of the licensed establishments. And whereas CB3 believes that smoking should be discouraged directly outside of cannabis dispensary establishments, and that the state should provide required signage to operators posted outside their establishments with this message to protect resident health. And whereas CB3 believes that enforcement of illegal cannabis establishments on both the state and local levels is urgently required immediately and on an ongoing basis, and that better funding and education is required to enable such enforcement. And whereas CB3 believes that its suggested amended regulations should be applied to all applications in order to ensure the fair and equal treatment of all applicants. And whereas hearing and negotiating each individual application at the community board level will be a substantial burden on the limited and already strained resources of CB3. And then I already read the therefore be it resolved.
All right, there's a few hands up. We can start debating this. David Crane.
Yeah, so first, everyone needs to understand that we are commenting on, on regulations for the, what's the word, dispensary. So this is like the store model of business, not for on-site consumption, which would be, I don't know, like the coffee shop, the Amsterdam coffee shop model of business. My opinion will be very different when we get to the on-site consumption licenses, but on this, the dispensary stores, I don't want community board input. I don't want us to get bogged down beyond this. I want them to pick up all of these regulations. The 45-day notification, if we got that, would allow us to put things on the agenda. Actually, we can't put things on the agenda if they give us just 30 days. I don't want it to bog down into SLA style negotiation stipulations. We will be totally cut out of this. It will be, I believe, a waste of our time. I'm already almost had it up to here with SLA. It's just it will not be productive for us. And this is in the large. That's how this differs from the other draft that was sent out 3 hours before the meeting.
See two more hands, Trevor, and then Susan. Trevor.
First, this was seconded, right? Or no? Okay. Second, I watched that hearing at City Council. Completely depressing. Just to frame where I'm at on this. And if we're asking for 45 days, but we don't want to have comment, then why are we asking for any time at all if the community board's not going to be involved? Additionally, I don't know what we tell the public about this process, which is new and coming to folks' neighborhoods, if we're not going to participate at the community board because we think it's too much work. I understand it is a lot of work, but then that leaves a burden on the community itself. And we need a backup, because if our suggestions, none of them get into these regulations, then what are we left with? you know, I understand we're asking for these things, but it doesn't mean that any of these things are going to be adopted.
Thank you, Trevor. See, Susan and then May.
Okay, so I don't think that dispensaries are the same as a bar, for the reason I said during the forum, or a retail liquor store. When you go to a retail liquor store, you're going to a store that's no different than any other store, because you're buying a product and you're taking it home, and there's no impact on the surrounding community. So I have been working. So I'm going to say my perspective has come from picking up on our many hours of conversations with OCM, who has actually asked us to give this input. And I just want to mention, they also, you know, they were on our task force meeting, and they particularly mentioned specifically that there were a lot of very thoughtful comments from our task force meeting that should be added to the draft that should be sent to OCM. And I was going to suggest maybe a board member could kind of go through those and try and pick those out before the full board. But to get back to this, the last thing I want to do is hear a lot more places like SLA. We don't have to, you know, because you get a notification doesn't mean you have to hear it. There are things the community board gets notifications for all the time that have no impact on us whatsoever, and we don't even comment. I think the community, particularly in the beginning, might get very, very upset. I think the community board, in spite of what we want, the community board is the place to allow the community to have input on planning for their community. I think that's the whole reason we exist. And I think trying a process where we list them and don't hear them unless people want to hear a specific one. I suspect, or I think most people in the community are in favor of these licenses and would not be against them. As far as smoking, I think we should have the ability, and maybe we could do that administratively, to work with the applicants. I know for Housing Works, residents above the line, because they still have lines, are complaining about smoke in their apartments. And what they're doing is they're going down the line and asking people not to smoke in line. Legally, they can smoke, but the store is asking them not to. And I think to be able to have that ability to talk to operators is important. I disagree with having the hours be limited to 12, because I think there are places like Times Square where they might want that they can be open later. I know CB2 has negotiated with their DOE fund. They did have them cut back on the hours. So, I mean, you have the option of doing that, and you can again do that administratively by saying certain places, just like the SLA committee voted on for their outdoor. You can say certain areas would maybe 12, and other areas, like a strictly commercial, why not do it at 2? You know, I'm kind of at a loss because there's so much information, and not having this in advance, I'm not having a chance to go through and look at all the things that were in one that are not in the other. I actually also started with the board 5, and I got rid of all the bureaucratic stuff at the beginning because I didn't see how it was helpful. I think a whereas resolution is fine. You don't have to. Bullets also fine for this. I think both ways are fine. And I think the issue about recognizing community boards are the only municipalities without rulemaking is an important thing to, because I don't think the OCM had any idea when they came up with these rules that that was happening. I think the ability to be able, right now, their discussions are all behind closed doors. So this is unlike an SLA meeting. SLA, meeting, not our committee, but the real SA. They bring up each agenda item at a board meeting, they discuss it, they hear input, and then they vote. This is totally different. Input goes to the board. They discuss it in private. They make recommendations to the board members, and when it comes up, there's no public input, and they just vote yes or no on the whole slate. So that's not addressed in these. I don't think it's transparent. I don't understand how it meets open meeting law. I guess they don't have to abide by open meeting law. And I agree with Michelle and David. I don't want to hear any of these things, but I think we have to have the option to hear them, create, and we know all the other community boards are going to ask to hear them, so it's going to happen. So I think if we create regulations that we can use and figure out an administrative way to hopefully not hear most of them, I think we could try and capture best of both worlds. But I also do think we have to listen to the community, and that we can't say that you can't have input on any of these when both the state law allows for community input.
See two more hands, May and then Jake.
Well, one thing I had to add, I agree with Susan's comments, but one thing I had to add, which I saw in the thing that we got emailed later before, and I don't think I heard in Michelle very fast reading, but there was something about the current notice to municipalities should include more information than required by the section 119. So is that in your thing? So it should include information about their applicant's business experience, etc. Is it? I can't see, but if it is. Do you have that in there?
I have read both of them. It is not. That could be lifted into it.
Or no, it could be added in, right?
Could be.
Yeah, well, it's in the email that Susan sent out, but I don't recall hearing it in this one that we're looking at right now. So if everyone agrees that that should be, another thing that we should add in, then we should. About the notice to municipalities, including more information than currently required. And the example we give is the applicant's business experience, etc.
Is that going into the resolve clause? May?
Paul, do you want to ask if there are?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess it would be.
That's why I'm just asking that first question.
Yeah,
Would that go into
You would have to go into both.
any objections to what May just proposed?
I would need to see the language on the page before I know whether I'd object.
The fourth bullet, if someone can cut and paste it over in italics or something, we could then. Yeah, that's not the exact one. It actually is.
That wasn't the one I was talking about.
Did I say the wrong bullet?
I'm talking about the one with more information. It's like 2 sentences.
The fourth bullet, the current notice should include more information. It's
Yes.
basically an extension of the thing exactly above it. So you've got the same thought, but you don't actually say that it should include more information than required, including information about the applicant's business experience, et cetera.
It's that fourth, yeah, you got it, the fourth bullet point. Yeah. Wait, is there anything else that you
Oh,
waiting on something?
No,
oh
we're
no,
waiting.
I'm not waiting for anything.
Agree, this is
I'm sorry, I'm done. I saw that it was pasted in there, so that was the only thing. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Jake, you said you needed to see the,
Yeah, no objection. Sorry, it was not very clear without the language on the page.
it's okay. Is there any, outside of Jake, he didn't object, was there any objections to putting this in?
No. Okay. Um,
Hold on.
Could I just add something that I think should be added to that? After business experience, I think it should say and hours.
Like, and HOURS hours.
Yes.
Okay. Any objections to that? All right, Michelle cleans that up. I'm gonna go to Jake, has his hand up. I'm presuming it's unrelated. Thank you, May. Jake, go ahead.
Thanks, Paul. And yeah, unrelated, I am speaking in support of this and want to give my sincere thanks to Michelle for pulling it together. The MRTA was passed by democratically elected legislators. It was signed by the governor, who then democratically elected governor, who then appointed the control board who's going to approve licenses. It's unclear to me why the community board should be involving itself with dispensaries after going through such a robust democratic process for permitting them, when we don't do that with stores that sell cigarettes, which I take Susan's objection to comparing dispensaries to liquor stores, but cigarettes, you can buy them at the bodega, you can smoke them outside. I don't know if anyone else here has been to the Housing Works dispensary. I was there this weekend. It's pretty understated. There was a long line, which I think speaks to the community support for new dispensaries. And I'll tell you that it's, I think, doubtful that many of those people I spoke to online are going to show up to CB3. So all that in mind, I'm strongly in support of this and strongly in support of CB3 not involving itself ministerially in the approval of new dispensaries. Thanks.
Sorry, my computer's a little whacked out tonight. Jake, thank you. David Trev.
Yeah, so at the very end, it says that to summarize, it says, by adopting these and uniformly applying them, it removes the need for Community Board 3 to provide their input. It doesn't do anything that prevents us from doing that, or even someday setting up a committee. I would advise that we not do that, but this motion does not do that. It just says that we believe that making these changes into the regulations would mean that we would not need to provide our input.
Forever.
Yeah, since this is my second time, my comment is along the same lines of what David said, is that we need to include something that says that we have some input. And I understand there are a lot of people who support it, but there are a lot of people who are at these meetings. And if we don't, they don't have a way to voice, then what is the community board doing? And I think we need to add something. It may not get through, But I think if we're gonna write comments on what we think should go in these regulations, then we need to add that we should have the opportunity to at least comment. And this is new. This isn't cigarettes being sold, and this isn't alcohol store. This is all very new. And the way it exists right now, I'm not sure that's going to change 3 years from now. And right now, it is a big problem.
Thank you, Trevor. Oh, Susan.
Yeah, I just want to say, so when Board 5 created their comments, it was before the draft regulations had been posted, you know, people, and they're actually, I believe, or I heard from the DM, that considering adding more draft comments. So I think they're a good base. I don't think they're a Bible. I'm losing, and I'm sort of disconcerted, so I'm sort of losing, I'm sorry, I'm losing my line of thought on that. I'll try and think of what I was trying to say. I'm sorry.
Can we give you a minute, or you're
No, go to the other people.
okay?
Oh, I don't know if there is anyone.
Okay, well, I'll raise my hand. How about that? So on this,
Oh, that happened in David's meeting also. I don't know how long it was out.
it looked like it was being recorded though. Was that?
It just said it's in
It was.
progress. Well, I don't know, that, like I said, that happened in
Did
David's.
it, but it didn't affect anything before, correct? It didn't affect that transportation meeting. I just want to make sure because this is all
I'm
going
not,
on the record.
I didn't listen to the whole thing to see if
Okay.
there was a break in the recording.
Okay.
I really should do that.
Okay. All right, that's separate. Sorry. Okay, so I know I haven't said anything, but as the committee kind of chime in. I'm just seeing a lot of these for the first time. I've seen these bullets for a while, I think, at least in verbal form. We have done a lot of work. Susan, Carl, you know, our conversations with OCM. There's been a lot of work done on all of this. And the one thing that I just took out of all these comments from different committee members was something Trevor said, because it's something that kind of has always been on the back of my mind, that we can send this in. This is what represents the board's position on these comments. And then none of this is taking it. They'll be like, yeah, this is what it was going to be like the entire time. Right? That's my fear. Right? That's my fear. Or we're able to get some of these things in there. That being said, I'm going to recommend one change. The 45 days that you have listed, Michelle, I would actually push that to 60. Because if we do ever have an option, we should have enough time to prepare. 45 days is not enough time, I don't think, in terms of the notification. And if there's ever has to be a committee created, there should at least be a 60-day notification period to give everybody kind of time. Just so it's more of that sort. So that I guess my motion, my change would be it's changed from 45 to no less than 60. Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, ask if there's a second for it, I guess.
Is there a second for 60 days? Oh, damn it.
I second.
No, I'll second
Oh,
it.
Trevor, no, I got a second.
Okay,
Now we can
can we
debate
open
it.
the-
Go ahead.
So my question, I guess, is what, and I actually sometimes wonder this, I mean, for SLA, how much it actually matters, because like we get 30-day notice for SLA, right?
Mhm.
But it doesn't really matter because the application isn't actually taken up within 30 days, if that makes sense. Like we have applicants that are fine with rolling over to the next month because like there's no way that their license is going to be adjudicated in that period of time. So I guess it's just like my question of like what happens after the 60 days? Is that when like, is that when the Cannabis Control Board would be able to hear it? Paul, do you know?
So, before I call on Susan, I think in my mindset right now, because this is on you, because this is different, because they're not as much as they're saying they want to treat this like the SLA, they're not. I think it's just giving us wiggle to whatever we have to opine on, if we have to opine on anything, to give us time to prepare for such a thing. You teach me more about SLA every day. I hear everything from SLA from the office, so I continue to learn more about that and try to do the basis of comparison. And I don't know how to feel about 45 days, if that's enough time to prepare and put something on the agenda or anything like that, because we just don't know like how they're going to treat it, OCM. And I know SLA's already got established procedures. They don't, the OCM doesn't. So I'm thinking about, these are comments, right? Thinking about like maybe you should give the municipalities, in this case, which are the community boards, enough time to prepare. Go ahead, Susan.
Well,
Okay, so they're not comparable at all. The SLA does not give you 30 days to comment. The SLA has no restriction on when you can comment. What you get is a 30-day notice. The applicant has to say, I'm giving the community board 30 days notice before I send my application into the SLA. There is no restriction whatsoever on when you comment. And as a matter of fact, if 6 months later, they go to the SLA and the SLA doesn't have comments from us, they'll call us and ask us for comments. This is totally different. You may not comment after 30 days. They're very clear. So they're not, and I think when they made this 30-day, they were looking at SLA stuff. And I think they made that same assumption because I think we all did in the beginning. They made the same assumption. One's a 30-day notice until the next step for the applicant. And this is a 30-day notice after which we must be quiet forever. And if I could just say, as far as what difference this makes, this is not like, this is a new process and they are looking at comments. They have often, just really reiterated how important it is. Also, our state legislators have said that their bills probably can be amended to be better. And once we vote on these, we will not only send them to OCM, but we'll give them to our state legislators so that they can make legislation regardless of what OCM does. And then certainly as far as the community facility line, the regulations give the municipalities, meaning in this case, city council, the right to also make laws on that. So we can then, and this was actually written in one of the comments from a board member, that we should then go take the same thing and go to city council and say, you could make a law about the 500 feet. So this one vote can be used in a lot of ways. And, some of those are our elected representatives.
Michelle, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think that that's a distinction that hasn't been clear, like that it's like a 30-day 30 or 45 or 60-day comment period versus notice, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I
guess I should say I'm fine with 60 days. I don't have a problem with it, given that, hearing that and understanding it now.
Yeah, and just for extra context, I guess, when we received the application for Gotham, that was, I think, on December 5th or 6th, 7th, 8th, one of those days. The notice was like, you're not allowed, you had to say something within 30 days. So at that point, it was like January 5th, which is 2 weeks ago, right? We just had the task force meeting last week, and we had several meetings with OCM asking about, maybe we need some more time to think about these things. And they, just sort of get a good feel for it. And I think they understood that. So there was some hope there, and it allowed us to get it in front of a task force as opposed to hearing that application in front of exact last month, which is what I was really anticipating was going to happen really up until the 11th hour. Last month's executive agenda had that Gotham application on it. So, and because they gave us such a limited amount of time, and then they've finally, not finally, but they were able to understand our position on this and allowed us to hear it, like 2 weeks later, gave us a couple more days to kind of figure it out, and that was us asking for it, was practically begging. So that I think that's why the 60 days, and I thank you for supporting me on that one and understanding it. It's not my hill to die on, but I think it's the one to kind of just put in there. Yeah, Trevor, go ahead.
So there's two things. There's the issue of the hours, which Susan and Michelle know.
We're just discussing the 60 days at this point before I go into the.
Since I didn't hear any objections to that, so I was just moving on to the next thing.
Well, I'm gonna ask, is there any objections to the 60 days? And now I'm asking. Hearing none, all right, 60's in. Thank you. Go ahead, Trevor. Now you can move on. Sorry.
So, because the what we've heard what we've heard is the issue of the hours, and that we're basically handicapping ourselves if we don't ask for some input. And I assume that what Paul and you, Susan, have done over the last 2 months, or maybe even more, has spent a lot of time talking with OCM, and that has been the input from the community board. And if you think that wasn't valuable, or you think that you're wasting your time at that point, then maybe we don't need to have community board input. But I do think we need that. So, but I think those are the only two issues that we're really talking about at this point. The hours, and adding a bullet point to basically say that we should play a role. We should play a role. Not sure what that should be. Susan had outlined it, maybe administratively, but I do think we should play a role.
Before I call on you, Amanda, let me just answer one of those things. A lot of, I talked about it a little bit in my board chair report as to why I created a task force to be limited. My fear is that all these boards are creating committees already without being prepared. And I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. So I hesitant about a lot of this stuff. I've been very conflicted about a lot of this. So, hours is one thing, but what role do we really play? Is I think the biggest question here. Do we give ourselves an option to create a committee at some point and hear applications down the line, or do we not? And I think that's the biggest one here, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with this resolution. It's just that David had mentioned that there isn't something that says that we play a role. I think it's needed.
Yeah, Paul the chair and Paul the person may be having conflicting opinions right now on this. I think we may have to allow ourselves an option to, if we have to create a committee, to do it in case there's a emergency break glass situation. Paul the person thinks very differently, but Paul the chair is thinking about if we have to create something, we should allow ourselves that opportunity. Amanda, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So can I call the question on this draft resolution?
You're gonna hate me, Amanda. I'm gonna use my chair stuff. I think there's still a lot more debate to be held on this. I don't think anybody else. I may come back to that eventually. But in this instance, I think there's still some more debate to be had, and then we can kind of wrap it up. But I thank you for that. I see two hands are up, Susan and May.
Susan, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I'll learn in another 2 years. Why don't we just say that we don't want to hear applications, as opposed to saying that they shouldn't be coming to community boards. Why doesn't community board 3 just say, we don't want to hear the applications? And then you can give yourself an sort of an out, and if something comes up that, I mean, because at this point, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. And it doesn't give you an option. And so if you will allow community boards to hear them, but we choose not to, you don't have to. I don't understand why we wouldn't choose the option to give ourselves the option instead of not having them come to community boards. I'm sorry, I'm really not being very clear tonight. So I would, you know, I would like to hear answers to that. You know, why do we want to say no board should hear it as opposed to we are deciding not to hear them?
May.
Oh, so I think that there should not be something in there that, you know, from what everyone is saying, should not be something in there to say that community board is required to make comments or required to have a meeting. So correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, like, you know, at Human Services, we get all these notices about homeless shelters, right? But
Right.
are we required to have a public, I mean, we always have a public meeting about it because there's great interest in it. But are we actually required?
There's
I mean,
so
so, you know, so I'm trying to make an analogy here. So, you know, maybe so that
Again,
it
that's
gives us some
totally-
flexibility. It's
that's
totally different.
totally different.
Okay.
They don't want to hear that they're not giving what they are doing. No, seriously,
Yeah.
they are giving notification. You are going to have a homeless shelter there. They are not saying, and you want to, if you want to comment, you should do this. We may choose to comment. We generally don't. And we generally don't comment on the individual ones because we're not given the opportunity.
Okay.
So
But we have meetings about them. So that, but,
because
you know,
we choose to.
you're right.
Because we choose to, and we did for one shelter, we did decide to make a comment. And then there was one where we had a horrible provider, you know, so we generally don't, but the option is there if we want to.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, is that sort of what we're looking at here? Like having the option, but not required to do it?
Well, you're never required to, you know.
Oh, okay.
Come to you when you get a ULIP or anything else. ULIP, you're required to have a public hearing. But as far as comment, like I say, we get revocable consents. Nobody even knows what they are. We don't bother commenting on them. It's like somebody put a bench out in front of their store, have a storm door or something like that. So you're never required to do it. There is nothing. All this is saying is that it will go to the community boards and you have an opportunity to. There's nothing saying you have to have a meeting. There's nothing saying you have to comment.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see whose hand was up first. Michelle and then Jake. Sorry.
I'm calling the question again.
Jake has his hand up.
I don't think that needs a second, but I would second it.
Does need a second.
And he just seconded it. Is there, I still feel there may be some need, that's my opinion, is there may be some more debate.
In that case, Paul, I'm going to move to appeal that ruling. Could we take a vote on that? David, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but I think that we should take a vote on this.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, have you made your final decision?
No, I'll allow a vote on this, and that's what I was going, Jake.
Sorry.
Debate. I'm gonna just call it out myself. Michelle, to end debate, yes or no?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm just going down my list. I apologize. Give me a second. Mei Lee to end debate.
Yes, yes, to end debate.
Trevor Holland to end debate.
No,
Amanda Liu to end debate.
Yes.
David Crane to end debate. David Crane.
No.
Jake Gold to end debate.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. I'm just going through my list. Kenyon Hernandez to end debate.
This is debate to end the debate on the entire draft or this highlighted part right here.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay. Larissa Shainberg.
Yes.
Tariq, I know you're not doing well. You just said yes. Thank you. The yeses have it. Debate is ended on this item. Am I missing anybody? Okay. What we'll do now is actually vote on the resolution as presently constructed. You can say yes, no, or abstain. Kenyelle, I'm going to ask you to do that. Ask you to call on the members of the executive committee.
Okay, 1 minute. Let me get my thing back up.
Okay, Kenyo, I have a line for the votes on the front of the agenda for the number 2 item. I have lines there for you to fill in the votes.
So the yes and the no?
Yes, no.
Yes, no, and abstain. There's 3 lines there for you. Once you get the number in, you
Got it. Okay, Paul Rangel. Paul? Yes. Eric Diaz absent. Tariq Darrell?
He's going to probably put it in the chat, so just pay attention.
Did you
Come back to him. I
come
think,
back to him? Okay.
yeah.
Larissa Scheinberg?
Yes.
Kenyon Hernandez? Yes. Amanda Liu?
Yes.
Mei Lee?
Yes,
Jake Gold?
Yes.
Michelle Cooper Smith?
Yes.
Trevor Holland?
no,
David Crane?
Yes.
Okay. Did anyone see Tariq's
Tariq
response?
just answered yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Did we call on May?
May, yes. She
Okay.
said yes.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I think there's some absences, but
We
There's
have
one
9
absent.
yeses and 1 no.
all right.
And abstain is 0 because Eric is just absent. He's not
It's
abstaining,
just
right?
absent. It's just an absence.
Got it.
It doesn't count towards anything on this
All right.
one. Yes, Susan.
So I don't have this, will you, but I need it before tomorrow morning. So can you be sure and send the amended reso for us to put in the vote sheet for tomorrow morning?
Michelle, you have it. Can you send that over, please? Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for that wonderful debate. Nice and orderly. All right. So yeah, that motion, that resolution on the comments passes. Okay. That was fun. Committee reports. Because Michelle wants to throw up resolutions, she gets to go first. That's the way.
Thanks. We had 5 applications this month, and with some back and forth, I believe all 5 will sign their stipulations. we'll have to make, I should just say, we have to make like one tiny friendly amendment at full board, so hopefully I have your support to say, instead of you will control the crowd outside, you will control the crowd outside in front of your premises.
So the Houston Street, they're gonna sign?
Yeah, that's, yep, they
But there
signed,
was
yeah.
a hesitation there before. Okay.
Yep, they agreed to not use the outside courtyard, although the implication is that the building will be able to use the side yard, probably without any real rules, as far as I can tell. So I don't know if it ends up being worse for them.
Well, damn. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
which
you.
did not come up at the meeting.
All right. Parks. Trevor, please.
Any questions?
Yep.
You before I call on Susan, did you guys do the million trees resolution? I can't remember.
Yes, we did. It took a lot longer than it should have, since everyone was in support and the discussion sort of weaved to another place, but we had the main trees, which was voted yes, and a Tompkins Square closing for midnight. Susan has her hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, for next month, we're down to our one item is the update on funding for SDR from the downtown revitalization. So do you want to have a meeting? And I haven't heard back from Steve yet, surprise. So do you want to have a meeting for that one thing?
No,
Okay, so then. Parks
unless you think because I know Steve's not going to tell us until the last minute, and then he won't show up. So we can give him 60 days this time.
So what you're saying is you want me to ask him now for March
Yes.
and to cancel the meeting for this month, for February?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. Since she pulled ESCR, BMCR, we can put that in March.
Thank you.
Sorry. Something in my eye. Okay.
I'm sorry, was that it? There was nothing for parks?
No, he just asked for any questions. So-
Oh, he asked, right? Okay.
No, please put in that
I am.
it's being canceled from.
Oh, yeah, I got that part, but at the beginning, I just heard any questions and that. Okay,
No,
thanks.
I went in, someone asked about the Million Trees Amendment, which we passed. It's in the vote sheet, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
David, transportation. Sorry about that, Trevor. Thank you.
So we have kind of two parts to the meeting. The first part, there were no resolutions, but it was, well, there may or may not be, there's not officially a proposal for a pedestrian plaza on Avenue B, and I gave opportunity for members of the community to basically talk publicly directly to DOT about that, because as we know, often things do emerge pretty much fully baked, and then nothing can be changed after it comes as a proposal. So it was to try to give early input. They had been coming to meetings previously to want to do that, so we did it. No resolution from that. There were 4 resolutions about buses. I talked about the one which was interesting earlier. If you want to ask questions now, I'll take them.
Yeah. So first, I just wanted to comment on the people that came. And they also complained about noise and, at the programming, creating a lot of noise in one area. And I've been in touch with the people programming. Since then, they on their own decided to take away the noisiest parts and to move it or be able to move it around. And I've set up a meeting with them and police permitting and myself to figure out how to do that. For the bus stop on Pike Street, did you approve that?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so after the meeting, Department of Sanitation saw the signs that the applicant had put up, and it seems they have terrible problems with that applicant at that area. So I just forwarded the sanitation to DOT, and they're talking. I don't know what they're gonna do.
That's good. I mean, they just said they have a problem, not with that applicant, because that applicant doesn't operate there. They said that they have a problem with parking there, but this wouldn't be a parking situation. In any case, in an email you suggested we had revisited at committee, and I think it's better what you've done now, at least as step one, to put the two agencies in touch. Because we did discuss it at committee. And yeah, sanitation.
Yeah, I wasn't there, so I just, they're talking.
I'm sorry, Trevor.
Yeah, so Susan, if I can imagine sanitation doesn't want them at that site. That's but the other sites that they're looking at are worse, and this was my fear. But will we get notice if they want to move that site?
We should, we can, I can certainly, if, what would be great, it would be helpful to me if you send me an email saying they're concerned because the other sites would have a worse impact, and I could forward that to DOT and ask them to be sure and bring anything back before us.
Just to give people more background about what's going on down there. Pier 36, that's the basketball, the old banana pier, the basketball city, and there's the party buses, party boats that leave from behind there, and it's just been a problem. There's no restrooms, there's no, not insufficient trash pickup, etc. This is discussed a little in the resolution, and the buses are bringing people right to the location as close as they can get. It's not, it's bad. It is just a bad situation, and it's not just the buses. The buses are feeding into a larger problem down there, and although in front of the salt might not be ideal for those few days when the salt is needed, I don't think the buses will be coming on those days. Yeah, anyway, that's my thinking on it. That's the background.
All right, anything else, David? No, good. Human Services, May.
Yeah, so we had a meeting last month. There's nothing to vote on, but we did have the superintendent of school district 1, Carrie Chan, come to our meeting and just present on, the needs of her school district. So it's the first time we've had her there just to talk, about all these things. It was very nice to hear from her. The other thing is we had the intergovernmental representatives of Mount Sinai Beth Israel come to give us an update on their plan. First of all, the behavioral health center at 45 Rivington Street, they plan on a segmented opening. Actually, they said starting in the second quarter of this year. So we'll see. And then, just some updates about eye and ear and the main 16th Street Hospital. However, there were also many community members there, and, people are very concerned, about the actual services, any changes, accessibility, and all that. So one of the things, as you recall, there was a task force that the Manhattan Borough President convened. And it hasn't met since our current borough president took over. So at the meeting, we said we would ask them if they could reconvene the task force.
Okay.
And along with Community Board 6. Community Board 6 should also ask. We could ask together.
All right.
And that would be a really good idea,
So my
a place that
question
people
is,
can come to.
So my question for you, is that something you want me to bring up at Borough Board in February?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So put something together for me, so I can bring it
And I
together.
heard that he's heard about it. It's not like, but
No, but I can put it on a board. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. So in case you all haven't realized, Jake Gold is the new chair of land use, and he dodged a great bullet last night. So Jake, go ahead.
Hey everyone, sorry my camera's off. I had a light bulb literally explode, so I'm sitting here in the dark. I we missed the long-awaited hearing on the 88 East Broadway Mall for political reasons, but it will be coming up next month. So instead, we got to hear a very interesting presentation by NYCHA about the Preservation Trust, which is coming to a couple buildings around the district relatively soon. It was very informative, and if you've been hearing stuff about the Preservation Trust and maybe some fear mongering, I think that the NYCHA representatives did a really good job kind of laying out why the trust is something that a lot of people can be excited about. And the meeting was obviously recorded, so you can check it out on YouTube at your leisure. I think that's it. Any questions?
No, I don't think there's any questions, Jake. Good job. I know you all really prepared well yesterday, you and Andrea and the office, and getting ready for what should have been a much larger meeting. So that was a baptism by fire moment, but hopefully you guys will all be ready in February.
Major props specifically to Susan for orchestrating what was going to be seemed like very large and very complicated meeting that will happen next month. So you can all tune in live.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Susan, on that. All right. Last but not least is actually the Cannabis Control Task Force. Now, Heidi had to sign off. Yeah, Heidi is a new mother, so she has some motherly obligations to do. They passed a resolution in supporting the licensee, but at a different location. After hearing testimony from Project Renewal and Gotham Card and other stakeholders, they did vote to support the licensee, but at a different location. Correct me if I'm wrong, David, but I think that was the language pretty much. I'm being very shorthand about it, but that is their vote. I anticipate a lot of conversation about that on Tuesday night. All right. That is it for all the committee reports. Is there any old business that we should bring up? Any new business? Okay, Kenya, let's close it out with final vote and final attendance.
1 minute. Paul Rangel,
Yes.
Eric Diaz absent, Tariq Darrell. Is he still on with us?
Communicate via mic. He just said yes in the chat. It's okay. Take that.
Great. Larissa Steinberg,
Yes.
Kenya Hernandez present, Amanda Lou.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I keep saying it wrong, like different time. Mei Lee,
Yes.
Jake Gold,
Yes.
Michelle Cooper Smith,
Yes.
Trevor Holland,
Yes.
David Crane.
Here. It was a here vote, right?
Yes.
That's the final vote. Final to close out tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, David, are we supposed to say present or yes at the final vote?
Present, there's nothing being voted on at the full board. There is, but not here.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. There was a pause. I had heard, I think you say yes, and then I said, then there was a big pause, and I thought, oh, well, am I supposed to vote yes or no on what?
Okay.
Yes, that I'm present. What's that? Yes, that we're present. Thank you, everyone, for your patience tonight. I'll see everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.